Hi, welcome all to the first ever Middle Earth in Mercia podcast. So what is the podcast? The concept is a limited series podcast focusing on a group of rookies, us, on our road to Ardacon. As we sit here right now at the end of April, not one of us has ever entered a tournament of any kind. I think it's fair to say for at least 15 years, none of us has played Lord of the Rings with anybody outside of our immediate group. And I'm sort of tying this together with an ambition I've sort of had for some time to try something creative, whether that was YouTube or podcasting or something like that, and bringing it together with this to, at minimum, just record what I think will be an interesting and fun time for us. Hopefully, if somebody else gets some enjoyment out of it, that would be great. But yeah, the idea is to just give it a crack. It'll be about 4 months long, maybe 4 to 8 episodes, focusing on our road to Ardacon. And if it goes well, and I'm really enjoying it, that being the most thing, then maybe I'll keep going it. But if not, it's just a bit of an audio blog for myself and my friends to remember this short journey we've gone on from complete newbies to Ardacon players. I know anyone can buy a ticket, so it's not like we're particularly achieving anything. But I think it could be interesting. It'd definitely be interesting for me to be able to look back on these memories. Maybe it will appeal to some other people out there. So that's the concept. There's going to be sort of definitely myself involved primarily, and my friend Chris for sure, and hopefully one or two others who will be helping with the occasional episode and practice games and that kind of thing, and army building and so on. They're part of the group. They'll be involved. So beyond that concept, what exactly are we going to be talking on an episode to episode basis? So I think the first thing, first and foremost, is the game itself. We'll love it. What appeals about it? What's great? What nuance to the Middle Earth in what nuance to the Middle Earth strategy battle game is there that draws us as wargamers? Now, I think it would be too broad a topic to just start going into what exactly about wargaming. I'm talking about let's focus purely on what is it about the Lord of the Rings strategy battle game. Because for myself, for instance, like many people, I was into wargaming, Warhammer Fantasy, Lord of the Rings a lot when I was sort of a kid, up until about the age of about 17. And then, as happens with a lot of people, life's distractions take hold, and you sort of walk away from it for a little while. And then I've come back to it sort of in my mid to late 20s with a little bit more income than I had when I was a teenager, and I've been able to buy some of those marvelous models that I just couldn't afford when I was a kid. And I've really been loving it. And the gateway back into it was Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings wasn't my first love. I was definitely into Warhammer 40k because I got into it at a very young age at primary school. But then when those movies came out in 2001, it was full steam really, and my love for the Tolkien verse has never really gone away. I did read The Hobbit when I was a little bit younger than that, but I didn't really. I read it when I was so young. I didn't really realise it was part of a wider verse. I'm sure we'll be talking about the game, about the Tolkien lore, and so on, and what appeals to us about that. So the next thing we'll probably be discussing on the podcast is army building from our perspective, and I want to be really clear from the get-go that I'm not talking about we're going to be sitting down and we're going to be giving in-depth advice. My advice to you would probably be don't follow our advice at all. The viewpoint of this podcast is purely We are giving our perspective as a group of tournament rookies. I'd like to think that we will occasionally, come up with something that maybe it's not been thought of because we're coming at it from a different perspective. We are all quite experienced wargamers, and we are all big strategy fans. So I wouldn't say that we're clueless when it comes to that. But with a game particularly that has so many armies, I would be just being blind arrogant to say that I understand every viewpoint on this. I am sure we are going to sit down in some of these warm-up tournaments, and maybe even still at Ardcon itself, and someone's going to be sitting there with an army, and I am going to be completely blindsided by what they brought to the table and how they're going to do it. But I would like to think that we can have the occasional, diamond in the rough, and perhaps that viewpoint. I know, having got competitive with like certain computer games and things like that in the past. Um, and to a lesser extent, like sort of my own local group of games like Magic the Gathering and things like that. That when you've got an enclosed system like that, people do tend to develop into their own bubble meta. I mean, you often hear on the various podcasts and things like people talking about the difference between the UK meta, the Australian meta, and the American meta, and that's because people operate in their own bubble, and they respond to the stimuli that they're receiving. And if people aren't doing certain things, they're not going to respond to it. So yeah, I'd like to think coming in as this small group that's been playing together, maybe we'll have our own ideas about how to do things. I know, for instance, that we are a big fan of Horde armies and have been for some time. I remember listening to the podcast and almost being outraged about 3 years ago because, from my understanding, the UK meta then was really, really leaning towards elite armies. And I know that has changed a bit, and you do see a few more Horde armies now. I'm not saying we came up with that idea. I'm sure lots of other people were doing it as well. But yeah, that's just an example. So the next topic that we'll be covering is our experience of the events, our experience of our practice games. Interviewing ourselves. Really, what was it like at our first tournament? What was it like at our second tournament? What have we learned? This is really going to be sort of a bit of a crash course, and yeah, there should be a lot of learning. So I think it'd be interesting to share that, especially when we're going to record those organic conversations between us all, where we're breaking down what's gone on the day, what we think went well, what we think went badly, and I think that would be pretty interesting for us at least. Maybe there'll be a few people that will find it interesting as well. But I'm looking forward to recording that for myself, if nothing else. So the next topic I think that will come up, and I don't think it's going to be a main topic, but is game balance, sportsmanship, and fairness. I think with any game, no matter how friendly it is, no matter how good spirited it is, when you've got a winner, when you've got a loser, when it is defined in those manners, everybody wants to feel that they've had a fair crack at it. Everybody wants to feel that they've had the same opportunity for learning prior to the game. Everybody wants to feel that they've had access to the same resources, and everybody wants to feel that the only two things that have decided the outcome of that game, three things, is your own decisions, your opponent's decisions, and the roll of those dice. And yeah, I think that's going to come up. I think this is a supremely balanced game, which is part of the reason that it is so popular. But I think there are a few blind spots where perhaps it could be improved. And if those come up, we're going to talk about them. I don't really expect it to happen, and it's part of the reason that I've decided the Lord of the Rings battle game is going to be my first foray into tournament playing. I don't expect it because from everything I've heard online, the caliber and the sportsmanship from players is exceptional in this little community. But if little things do come up with our opponents, we certainly won't be name dropping or anything like that. That would be completely out of order. But we're going to talk about it. And even those times where you have conflicted with someone, and not in this game because I only play with my my friends, but I have conflicted with people in the past and in other systems and in other games. And even those can be learning experiences of how to deal with those situations. So yeah, we're going to talk about it. And yeah, just a catch-all really. If releases come out during this time, and we want to talk about them, we'll talk about them. That's a cool model. That's not a cool model. What we think about the rules and so on. So moving on, that's covered what we aim to discuss. What will we not be? Because I think that is just as important to define as what we will be. And what we will not be is pre-match, during, and post-match interviews at the tournaments. Logistically, it is much more difficult than what I'm aiming to do here. Part of the idea of doing this as a podcast in this format is that other than a light bit of editing, other than producing a few sound bites and things, it is pretty low weight for me. I'm just sitting down and spewing my thoughts and having conversations with my friends. I think that with our level of experience, our lack of experience at tournaments, it would be borderline disrespectful to be messing around with sound equipment and so on at a tournament when I'm meant to be focusing on the game. Yeah, maybe someday, like never say never. Might do the occasional one, but right now that is not something I aim to do. And more importantly, there are people out there doing an absolutely cracking job of doing that. If that's what you're after, I would highly recommend go and listen to the Entmoot podcast. Harry just does that top notch. I'm not trying to take away from what he does, but or the game itself. But obviously, the Lord of the Rings strategy battle game is quite niche, and the quality of output he's producing, I have absolutely no doubt. If he was doing it maybe for 40k, that guy would have a massive audience. I don't want him to move to 40k or anything like that, and I'm sure he's not planning to. But I'm just saying, I think it is that podcast is well appreciated within the community, but it deserves more love. And yeah, I would never even conceive of stepping on those toes. We're not going to be doing that. That's not what this is going to be. So second up, what else is this not going to be? It is not going to be in-depth and experienced tactical and strategy advice on the Middle-earth strategy battle game. If that's what you're looking for, I think you need to go elsewhere. If you want a fresh take, if you want a bit of a jostle with some outside views that might make you think a little bit differently, if you want to see how naive we are and have a good chuckle about that, then that's something else it can be. But yeah, maybe for an absolute beginner, so they can learn the first steps as we're learning them, and save themselves a little pain, it might be useful. But this is not intended as advice. None of it is intended as advice. Please take it all with a grain of salt. Please take any strong opinions we express with the benefit of the doubt that we don't know any better. There are much better places to go. I would recommend listening to the Green Dragon podcast. I mean, I've lost count of how many tournament winners they've had on that show. The main hosts are tournament winners. I think there's an Ardacon, a Champions tournament runner-up or winner. Like, there are much better people, and certainly them. We can't even hope to hold a candle to that. So I just want to make clear, we're not looking to emulate that whatsoever when we're talking strategy. This is a bunch of rookies bouncing around ideas, and maybe occasionally reaching out for a little bit of help from the community. So the next two of what is it not is basically painting tutorials and terrain. As I mentioned earlier, we're doing a podcast because we feel it will be low intensity for us, where we can put out good output while recording this little experience. So yeah, we're not going to be doing painting tutorials or terrain building. There's going to be no video element. I don't know. Maybe it'd be the occasional clip or something on one of our Instagrams or something at a tournament. But yeah, that's not going to be the primary focus. So you won't find that here. There's plenty of great and better painters and terrain builders out there that you can find. There's far too many painters to even begin naming, but terrain building, obviously Zorp comes to mind with Lord of the Rings. I mean, he builds like Weta Workshop level stuff. Go watch that. It's great. Okay, so moving on, who is this podcast aimed for? Who is it being produced for? And I have to be straight up honest on this one. Number one is for me and my friends to record this little journey, almost like an audio diary, an audio blog. I think this is going to be a nice little period in our lives of getting exposed to this new community, doing it all together as friends. Like, I mean, not to get too corny, but that's almost like one of the main themes of Lord of the Rings, isn't it? Get. I know they had much worse times, but getting through things with friends makes it all better. And when you're doing something enjoyable and you're doing it with friends and you're doing new things, there's almost not. Well, there are some other things that are great fun, but yeah, there's almost nothing better. And I see this as a way of recording it and, dragging out those experiences. I mean, like, I've got a number of hobbies, and whenever I sort of like for instance, I go to an airsoft day or I go to a motorcycle track day or something, sitting down with your friends at the end of the day and chatting about all those great moments you've had, whether they were a little bit scary, whether they were a little bit exciting, or whether it was just straight up enjoyment. It almost drags out the day, and sharing those experiences with your friends, solidifying those memories in your mind, is great. And I see that as a bit of that. And yeah, I mean, if one, two, three, four, five people, I mean, I'd be absolutely over the moon if anybody listens to this. But yeah, I'm not going to lie. It's primarily for ourselves. That's why it's a limited run. It's a bit of an experiment. It's a bit of fun. If I really enjoy it and we get a handful of listeners, then maybe I'll carry on. But if not, then no harm, no foul. So beyond just my selfish reasons of wanting to do this, who else is it for? And I think perhaps new players, but with a basic knowledge of the game. I'm not going to be sitting down and saying, look, this is the phases and so on. We'll be talking basic tactics and basic strategies for sure. And as we move from our sort of internal group meta to the wider UK meta, getting exposed to all these tournaments, I think that'd be an interesting journey, and I think that could potentially be useful to other people looking to do the same thing. I wouldn't go as far as saying I regret, because I've done some great things over the last few years, but it has been sort of an ambition of mine to perhaps go to a tournament in one form or another. I was thinking about doing 40k at one point, but the meta in that is so aggressive. Like, I like a competitive game, but I don't want to turn up at a tournament where somebody is playing, half a dozen identical units. I Part of what I love about the Lord of the Rings is that there is this variety and lore, and people try and do interesting things. They try and do interesting what ifs, and I far enjoy seeing an army that has been crafted with some sort of joy and great idea that this person has come up with than I thought this was the optimum combination of blah blah blah. I'm not really interested in that. If I wanted a hyper competitive game, in all honesty, I probably wouldn't do wargaming. A good half of this, in my eyes, is for the love of it. I do like a competitive game, though. I'm not going to lie there. I don't want it to be just for fun. But anyway, bit of a sidetrack there. Yeah, I've needed a bit of a push. And seeing the Great British Hobbit League, Ardacon, the doubles tournament at Warhammer, all of those things coming back on, the content from creators starting to come back out as they're going to more tournaments and things, it's relit a flame in me. I've sort of spent 2 years doing 40k quite a bit, and I've really enjoyed that. I love the models, beautiful models, but I'm not going to lie, I've become a bit frustrated with the current rule sets and the current changing. Yeah, and combined with that and what I've been seeing going on with Lord of the Rings, I've just been like, now's the time. Let's do it. Let's get tickets to these things. Let's go out and do it. And the final shove was, yeah, like I've perhaps got a bit carried away. I've created all the framework for a podcast. And I've been like, Ardacon? Should we go to Ardacon? And we're going to Ardacon. So yeah, maybe this will act as a push for someone else. I think that would be great if like even one person is like prompted to do the same thing, because I know I haven't experienced any of it yet, but I have to believe we're gonna have a great time, and I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, primarily new players with basic knowledge of the game who perhaps also haven't gone to tournaments. Who else could it appeal to? So players looking for a different viewpoint. I think it could work with that as well. New experienced players out there, you're probably going to get a bit of a laugh, or maybe a little bit of insight of like, you know, of other ways to think about. Because none of us have been on scene. Frankly, we've got no experience whatsoever. We're as green as they come, and maybe that will be of interest to people. Yeah, like I say, maybe having a little chuckle at our naivety, but maybe every now and then, you know, maybe one idea in 100, we come up with something that perhaps people haven't thought of, and I think. Yeah, I don't think that's arrogant to say maybe we could do that. I'm not saying we're going to be going to tournaments and be having a positive win ratio. In all honesty, I'd be really happy if I go to some tournaments and just win 1 or 2 games. That would be amazing. And who else? Finally, yeah, people who just want something to paint to. There is a lot of good content out there, but there is only a limited amount of content, especially for the Lord of the Rings game. And I don't know about you, but for myself, I'm not going to lie, it's a pretty low threshold. Basically, people just need to be talking about the hobby, not have a completely offensive voice, and I will probably sit down and paint for it. So, yeah, maybe we can pick up a couple of people that want to listen to that. So, yeah, that's what we are, what we'll discuss, what we're not going to be.
I'm going to introduce my co-host, Chris. Chris, say hello.
Hello.
Very good. So Chris is sort of my main friend that I've played Lord of the Rings with over the years. And in recent years we've moved on to sort of playing 40k and things like that. But then obviously, as I said at the beginning, we've sort of become reacquainted with Lord of the Rings again, and suddenly been motivated to take on this lofty challenge of going from no tournaments all the way up to Ardacon. So yeah, Chris, why don't you introduce yourself a bit more? And I've already been through mine, so why don't you talk about your hobby experience? How did you get involved in the hobby?
Yeah, well, I think I'm even more of an amateur than you are, Sonny, really. When I was 10, 11, I collected some Warhammer Fantasy and painted that. And I did buy at the time a few boxes of Lord of the Rings models. I think I bought some elves and possibly something else, and wasn't particularly good to paint, so was kind of getting out of the hobby at the time. Yeah, but then a few years ago, well, quite a few years ago now, we started playing again. You had some models around. I'd dug some out of the loft, I think, and I think we maybe played one of our first games of Lord of the Rings where I was using some of my old Bretonian Warhammer Fantasy models, but with you as a game, someone to play the game with, I was drawn into it really, and bought a few models on eBay, used a lot of Dettol to clean them up, and managed to get a few on the cheap, and we sort of managed to just hit a sweet spot before the prices really started spiking on eBay. I don't know when it was, maybe 2017,
yeah, it was sort of when the game started to get revived.
Yeah, there was probably clearly a wider revival that we were part of, and I think part of that is we were all of a generation where all these models were there, they were great, but our pocket money, you know, didn't leave much. You didn't really have enough money to buy everything that you wanted, and I guess now we've probably 10 years into our careers, have some spare cash, haven't yet got children, and that means that we've been able to do a bit of childhood wish fulfillment and get in and build some of the armies that we didn't build as children, really, I suppose. So certainly for me anyway, and yeah, that's been a really great part of it. I really enjoy the painting side, but it's obviously lovely to get the models out on the table. So I never had played a game of Lord of the Rings until I played with you.
Okay.
Whereas you, I think, had played as a teenager.
Yeah, I played quite a lot when it was one of my favourite games to play because I didn't really understand the rules to 40k properly.
Yes, yeah. Well, then that probably leads me on to why this is a game I probably enjoyed the most playing with you, because we've played a few different ones. I've played some Warhammer Fantasy with another friend as well, and I guess they're all different things, but what you can say about Warhammer Fantasy, and especially Warhammer 40k, is they're quite involved, complex games where there's a lot of rules, and the rules often change depending on, there's a variety of editions. In the case of Warhammer 40,000, that's constantly being updated, so you can buy a codex and then that might be out of date pretty quickly.
So yeah, definitely, I do agree with you. We're maybe bleeding into my further points. Yeah, but so you were more Warhammer Fantasy when you were a kid.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, sort of about 2014, 2015, we started playing together.
Yeah, practically it was as early as that. Yeah, it probably was actually, yeah.
I do remember that a few of our games were a bit fractious, mainly because you were reading the rule book, whereas I was trying to remember the rules as they were when I was a teenager.
Yeah, exactly.
There's been
a difference there. But I was obviously coming into it clean as well. So, but I think that was quite a good learning curve of, how do you play a game with a friend and not have an argument, essentially?
Oh, definitely.
What are the kind of ways of doing that? And I think, that's definitely something that it takes maybe a game or two to get the hang of, but once you get that, it's really enjoyable.
Yeah, I think I had to sort of relearn how I used to play with my friends when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And then, as a grown man, playing both a competitive game, but you're playing with a friend and you want everyone to enjoy.
Yeah, because we're both quite competitive, I think, when we play board games.
Yeah, and we have to sort of keep it in check.
Yes,
like if you were playing something like chess or something, it's a short form game, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think this Lord of the Rings has some elements of chess. I really enjoy playing chess, and I enjoy that it feels like a very multi-dimensional version of that in a way, with a lot more variables, but there's a relentless logic to it at the same time.
So yeah, I mean, I guess we're getting there. So we're flowing to our next topic, which was meant to be discussing why we like Lord of the Rings specifically. So we're not going to go into why we like wargaming, because I think that's quite a broad topic, and anybody that's going to be listening to this already knows why they like wargaming. But yeah, Lord of the Rings, I think for me, it's a combination of that. It's set in the Tolkien verse, what Peter Jackson added to it visually, the Perry sculpts, which I know they've got new sculpts now, but I am a big fan of. I think they've got a real style to them that appeals to me and how I like to paint as well. Then the simple complexity of the game, that the core rules are simple, but the complexity comes from, like you were talking, that it has elements of chess. Like when you're up in combat with one another, it's almost like a dance, isn't it? Of making sure that you're trapping where you should be trapping, make sure you're supporting where you can be supporting, and also factoring in whether you have priority or...
Yeah, whether you have the initiative in the game as well, whether you've got that forward momentum, there's that. And as you say, a complexity that arises from a relatively simple set of rules. I think that's the key part of the comparison there. That gives a lot of enjoyment to the game as well, I think. Of all the war games I've played, this is the one I probably do enjoy playing the most.
I think it has been somewhat shielded from the complexity and the competitive creep of some of the other Games Workshop products as well, being it is one of their mainline games, but it's a lesser mainline game, isn't it?
Yeah, it's probably a bit more niche, but I think it's clearly enjoying a very great and consistent revival, and the fact that people are still really interested in it more than 20 years on now from the release of the films and then the range of models. You and me have both done that classic thing, which I think happens to a good 3/4 of hobbyists, that you fall out of love with it when you sort of, I guess, later puberty. Girls are more important, or men, or whatever you're into, really. And
the usual things that
exactly.
distract you when you're a young adult. And then, once you become a bit more financially stable and you've got somewhere to live all the time, suddenly this has a huge appeal.
Because you go from that kind of safety net with your parents and being fairly reliant on them, and you can kind of get that early involvement in the hobby, and then there's lots of demands on your time, whatever you're doing at that age, but you're probably studying. There's a lot of socialising, you're forming your identity, and you're doing other things perhaps. Some people, absolute troopers, and they keep going with the hobby throughout, and fair play to them. But it's definitely something I sort of dipped into occasionally. I do some painting, but I wouldn't really dive in. But I think since Lord of the Rings has come on the scene for me, I've just been full-throated painting every week, and I think I've got more models than I should have now. So, yeah,
I do remember that between my sort of like 8-year absence, there was like one sweet summer where I was in love with Cadians because my girlfriend at the time had broken up with me.
Yeah, so it's a comfort thing, isn't it? And I do find like when I need it, I can retreat to doing some painting and having a game with you, and that's great.
I mean, the social side is definitely part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, well, because you buoy each other on as well, and sort of look at what someone else doing, gives you an idea, or you kind of also want to make sure that the armies you've got look really good on the field. Because that's a big part of the appeal for me, seeing the visual aspect of it, how it all looks. And
something we should touch on there, because Chris will be too modest to say. Chris is the most prolific army painter I've ever met. He can paint to an excellent quality, and I have seen examples of that. So the majority of his models are done to a
Battle Ready, I would say.
I was going to say Battle Ready, but I think they're better than Battle Ready. They are definitely better. Battle Ready is 3 colours, and you definitely do. You go beyond.
Oh, I go beyond that.
You go well beyond that.
It's whether I get into the highlighting side of things and do that extra stage, or if I just think, right, I'm painting this batch of army for this game, or I've got this idea.
I mean, this may be something we touch on back and forth. Chris keeps account of his painted model count and a rough ratio. Do you know what you're currently?
I actually do. So I've just recently broken the 3,000 model mark of total models. So that includes some 140,000
of painted.
So that's my total collection, not including a load of rubbish in a box, basically. But broadly, just over 3,000. I've just got some War Master models as well. We won't count those. It's a bit hard to account for the small ones on a strip. But 3,028mm models. And of those, about 2,480 are painted.
That is incredible.
Yeah. So because I've sort of had to say, I have to keep that relentless focus on making sure that, if you keep buying them, you've got to keep painting them, and to justify the future purchases, really, I guess.
I mean, putting that in perspective, I would at a guess say I've maybe have 1,000 models, and I reckon 200 of them are battle ready, and about 50 I never intend to touch a paintbrush to.
And I guess I think in maybe when I started taking account of the models, because I thought, well, this is growing quite quickly, and actually I need to keep track of this, otherwise it becomes a very unwieldy beast. And I think maybe it was in 2020 going into lockdown, I think I had 1,000 models. So there's 1,000 models a year for the last 2 years has been the kind of acquisition rate.
Yeah.
And I've just tried to keep pace with the painting really on that front, I think.
It is when I play Tom, who's someone that will hopefully introduce on the podcast at a later date, and when I play Chris, I find it a great motivator having friends that turn up with painted armies, and wanting to offer that immersiveness to my opponent, because it is lovely when you've do you remember quite some time ago when it was a game we played here at my house, where I turned out and opened my box with those Morgul Knights.
Oh, yeah.
And how proud I was that I had basically killed myself for the last 24 hours painting them.
They were beautiful. That was a real... remember that game as well. And I still want to get some Morgul Knights. That's something I don't
They
have.
are lovely models.
I think they're really nice. And the way you painted them is really nice as well. I think there's a few things in there really. But, the visual aspect of painting, I think... It's a nice social aspect. There's the painting as a kind of almost therapy. There's all sorts of aspects in there that make it a really absorbing thing. But I suppose what was maybe missing was the kind of, we're playing in our little bubble.
Yeah.
But there's these guys out there, they're playing tournaments, and that looks like good fun. But we have not really yet got to the stage of it. But I think, now is going to be the time that we dive headfirst into it all.
Which, that nicely moves us on to our next point of discussion, which is why didn't we do this earlier, and what held us up? So obviously one of the part of the scope of the podcast is sort of one of the groups we feel we can appeal with this is other people that are thinking of doing the same thing. We're sort of, by starting this, are taking a bit of a punt that we're really going to enjoy this.
Yeah,
but,
quite.
I think we will. Yeah, hopefully this doesn't become a very passive-aggressive diary of our issues with the world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think from what I can tell, most people on social media can be pretty nasty to one another. But when you look at the interactions on the Great British Hobbit League or all these other groups, you think actually, everyone's dealing with each other in a very, very civilised manner, and it all seems very nice, really.
Yeah, there does seem to be a consistent positivity amongst the online community that perhaps you don't see with other things.
Yes, definitely. There's not much that's contentious about the hobby, really. You just enjoy it, and that's great, and people can bond over that. So.
I think, credit where credit's due. Perhaps the games developers have pushed towards that as well, because there's even a page in the main rulebook that says to abide by the golden rule, which is like, if in doubt, give the benefit of the doubt.
Absolutely, just be generous to your opponent and those kinds of things. And it'll be interesting. Yeah, I guess part of the reason I always am a bit hesitant about competitive things. I've enjoyed competitive things at various points in my life, but I've always been a bit like being too competitive can spoil the fun, and you sort of think, I don't really need the stress that this hyper competitiveness is creating. And again, I think Lord of the Rings, on the face of it, seems to be a nice balance, and it'll be interesting whether we find that at the tournaments, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of my hesitations definitely was because I've had this hunger to do a tournament or something like that. Like I went to that event last year, didn't I? Which was sort of a meet-up for a 40k YouTuber. And that was good fun. And it was really nice to play other people as well and find that, I could do that as an adult and have good fun. Not as much fun as playing within our group, but good fun playing with strangers. I do agree with you. Like with 40k, everything I've seen on there, like if you go to a tournament there, you're likely to play 4 of the same armies. And they will be spamming certain units. I like, from what I've seen online, that someone will be like, I've had this idea of a what if, or I love this moment from the movie. Exactly. I'm going to create an army based on that.
Yeah. I like people who do value the thematic aspect of it, and that's a reflection on how well balanced the game is. Really, I don't think that would be possible if the game wasn't as balanced as it was. I'm sure people have got little gripes. I don't really, to be honest, but I'm sure people do have them. But on the whole, it seems very well balanced. And you don't really hear of anybody online being like, "Oh, I've had this bad time." Yes, exactly.
And even when people are playing, like, because there are some sort of, I don't know whether I'd go as far as to call them meta players, but there's people that are bringing very competitive lists and winning tournaments and like.
Yeah, and that's progressive. Fair enough,
I'm not complaining about that. I just mean that when people walk away from those games, you don't hear them saying, "Oh, I've had a dreadful time."
No, I mean, I suppose I think I maybe have read 1 or 2 accounts of games where you get someone playing a horde army and then they deliberately time the game out. I guess that's the only thing I've heard of. That seems to be bad etiquette on the whole.
There was an incident a couple of years ago at Ardicon, wasn't there, where unsubstantiated, we don't know whether it's true or not, but I think there was an accusation of slow play.
Yeah, and I can understand that, but at the same time, some people, especially if you've got a lot of models, you probably do need quite a lot of time to think about it. So I guess maybe that's just thinking about your opponent and getting the game done when you design your army a bit, as tempting as it might be to just take as many goblins as you can and nothing else.
I mean, it wouldn't always work in your favour to slow play, would it?
Yeah, exactly.
But one thing, I mean, if I were to really nitpick and say, I've got one slight worry, it's the idea of, specifically at Ardicon, where there is going to be a lot of skilled players.
Yeah, sure.
I find it a little bit strange that people that are directly involved with the creation of the game are playing at the tournaments. Yeah. It sounds like they're all really nice people, but I'd be a bit disappointed. I know it's on us that it's our first run of tournaments. But if I sit down and I'm like, oh, the chap who's written the rule book is sat over there. Yeah. I think I'd go and get myself a tall drink and just, have the best out of it as I could.
Well, I think that, but there's a benefit in that because you can say, I'm not sure what the rule is, but you'd hope that they would know.
Learning experience.
Yeah, and you at least don't have to rely on looking the rules up so much. But yeah, I guess there's an element of, have they made one army better than the other player? I don't know, but good luck to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say, obviously, my hesitation there could be applied to, I sit across and it's a multi-tournament winner, couldn't it? And obviously, just because I'm entering doesn't mean they shouldn't be playing. So yeah, but that was just one thought I had. But yeah, no, mostly I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it'll be good. Yeah, and I guess another part of the attraction, when you proposed doing these tournaments was, it briefly crossed my mind that we could use an army we already had. But actually, to go back to what we were saying earlier about my model collection, a lot of the models I've bought are from all kinds of different manufacturers, and I might create a proxy army from some Oathmark figures for a Gondor force, or use some, I think it's Conqueror dwarves that are Colin Patton's sculpt for my Iron Hills, but I'm, you can't take those to a tournament. So
you can take them if they're not Games Workshop ran. As long as you run, from what I've been reading online, and this is something we can check with some of the tournament organisers, is that as long as you run it past the tournament organiser, generally not proxies, because proxies technically means you're using an existing model. I think there's another phrasing, or maybe I'm completely wrong.
Alternate sculpts.
Alternate sculpts,
like that,
are completely fine as long as you get them okayed by a tournament organiser.
Okay, yeah.
So,
but I guess we're running up to a Games Workshop tournament, and
that was the original aim, isn't it?
The more compelling reason here is this is a good chance and reason to paint a new army. So
and that nicely brings us along. So I think when we sat down and we thought, so to give people a very quick timeline, essentially I saw that there was the doubles tournament at Games Workshop Warhammer World. I love going there. It's the home of all these games we love. And a lot of other model industry just in Nottingham in general, and thought this could be a great opportunity for us to finally have our first tournament. Doubles seemed like a great idea because at worst you're like hanging out with your mate all day, and you can have a good laugh that way. At best you have some great games as well, so that's what got us back into it. So when we were choosing an army we were going to play together, it was focused around that doubles tournament. Yeah. So I think the sort of quick criteria we drew up initially was to be a new army that neither of us particularly collected.
Yes.
Something that was thematic but also could be competitive. And we drew up a list of a few different ones. So we had a lot of sort of Isengard figures, but neither of us had particularly played with them intensely. What were the other choices we discussed?
I think there were a few we thought about. We've got sort of quite a big Mordor army between us. Talked briefly about possibly a Rohan army, I think.
But you'd done a lot of Rohan.
So I've done quite a lot of Rohan. And enjoyed playing with them in a variety of different forms, actually.
You've done some really good armies. It's something we can talk about in later podcasts. Yeah. But I do think we should maybe, when it comes to our solo Ardacon armies, for instance, we should maybe look at something that we're more comfortable with. I think I will almost certainly take Mordor.
Yeah, okay.
For the individual, but we can play Harridan all the way through. So when we got to Harridan, I think the idea was there's some great models I've had my eye on for a while. I've wanted to buy the Fat Boys, the merchant card for a long time. I love them. I love their rules. Like hit like an absolute sledgehammer, but a bit vulnerable because they're just they're stood there in their gold chains with no armor.
There's plenty of belly to attack, isn't there? So,
the lovely Raiders. 11 points for a guy on a horse with a lance is great. Like I think I love wargs because you can get that strength 4 from the warg, but I think with the lance it's one step ahead of even that.
Yeah, I think getting the 5+ on the roll to wound, is it?
Yeah, if you're attacking someone that is defense 6, then it becomes a 5.
Yeah, so
with the lance.
That's pretty handy, really, isn't it?
And if you're also attacking, is it a 3 on 5 would normally be a 5? Or is it 6? No, I think it is a 5. So yeah, with the lance, you can bring a 3 on 5 down to 4s, which is where, and then obviously you're getting the double strike from knocking them down. So yeah, in general, we liked the models, we liked the sculpts. Thought that would be a good army to prepare.
It'd be good fun to paint, I think.
Yeah, and we've sort of been. We're not dead set on what the army composition is going to be, but at the moment, the things we're sure about is that we're going to have Suladan, who, although perhaps he's not the hardest hitter, is quite competitive points-wise. You get that 6-inch banner. You can have him on an armoured horse. He is strength 4. He's got 3 might, 3 will. Only downside is 1 fate, and no lance. It would be awesome if he could have a lance choice.
Yeah, if he could have a lance, that would top him off. But I think, fair enough to limit him. Yeah.
Then we've got so he's going to be the leader of my half of the army, and on your side, we're certain that we're going to have. Is it the Betrayer?
The Betrayer, yeah. So I had a bit of a glitch on acquiring the Betrayer, which I'm trying to resolve with Games Workshop. But I did order it, and I've got an extra bit of the Knight of Umbar, and I'm missing actually the Betrayer on foot. So hopefully they'll be there to lead the armies. So
I'm sure they'll
be there on horse anyway. So.
And hopefully Games Workshop customer service is normally pretty.
I hear
good.
they're very good. I know that they're under a lot of pressure at the moment from the email I received. So I'm being patient, and I'm sure they'll be in touch very soon.
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't take too long. So we're certain on that. He's got that fantastic rule that if you're if you're playing with poisoned weapons anyway, you can re-roll all wounds within 6 inches of him if you spend a point of will.
Yeah.
So we're thinking him combined with a lot of guys with lances is a pretty nasty combination, especially when you've got the Serpent Guard in there with fight skill 4, very, very cheap elite cavalry.
Absolutely.
And then on my end, I'm backing it up with Harridan King with a lance and horse. And then sort of what's in the flux is how many merchant guard we're going to have, how many banners we're going to have, how many bows. We are going to have a lot of bows. Because I think that works in a number of ways. Even if, for instance, someone's got casting blinding light, with that re-roll all wounds on poisoned weapons, even hitting on 6s, if we have as many bows as we're discussing, which is maybe about 20, you're going to be getting wounds. And yeah, we can apply pressure to pretty much any army.
Yeah, I think we can outgun most armies on the bow front. And I think we'll have a nice strike force with the cavalry. And I think it kind of feels right to have, a kind of fairly weak, small infantry centre, or at least fewer of those, and to have a bigger focus on bows on the one hand, fast-moving cavalry and lancers on the other. I think that's what you kind of expect from a desert faction, really. Yeah,
we're going to have mobility, we're going to have some hitting power. The only ones that I maybe worry about is ultra-high defence armies.
Yes, that's difficult. Yeah.
Or terror-causing armies.
Yeah.
Which is one thing that, I think we need to think about whether we want a war horn or not. These are sort of like features of the game that within our little bubble we haven't seen a lot of play of, because nobody plays Angmar, nobody plays the 9 among our groups. So big terror isn't really something we've had to deal with.
No, and they are pretty low courage, I think, these guys. So that could be a problem. So maybe a war horn will be in order. We'll have to see how we go.
So moving on to our next topic, ambitions. I mean, I think I speak for both of us that I did actually write into another podcast to ask for some advice, the Entmoot podcast, which is my favourite Middle Earth sort of content creator, ran by Harry Parkill, who I'd recommend checking out if you haven't seen it, Chris. I think you'd quite like his style. And I wrote to him asking for a bit of advice, and one of the things he said was to just go into it with an open mind, be friendly. Realise we're not going to know everything because we've been playing in this bubble, and I think we're both going into it with that attitude. We both just
I'm quite interested to sort of learn some of the finer points of the game, really, and work out if we're doing anything wrong and how whether that affects army choices, all those kinds of things. And
I mean, for being honest, because I'm a bit of a competitive person, I'll be over the moon if we can win some games. It'd be dreadful to lose
Yeah,
all
I
of
think
them.
you would take that harder than I would. I think I could cope better. But I still would like to win a game. It's always nice to win.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we're definitely not going to walk in there and win all our games because we're going to be. I think what will trip us up mainly is playing unfamiliar game types that we don't normally play within our circle and playing unfamiliar armies.
Yeah.
I think if we sit down and we're opposite a Gondor force, we're opposite a Mordor force, probably Isengard as well.
Yeah, I think we'd be fairly comfortable. And dwarves as well.
If some of those Hobbit armies turn up that we're not familiar with.
I've never played a Goblin Town army, and I've never played, a Dale army, Lake Town. There's a few Hobbit armies that I find a bit intimidating. So yeah, if we come up against those, I'd be interested to see how that goes and discuss that. Definitely.
But yeah, so our current run of tournaments that we've got is there's a local one called the Bistro Bash, which I believe is early July. I have to double check that. So that is a singles tournament, but we can enter as a team.
Okay.
Ash, who's someone else we might introduce at a later date, is possibly up for that as well, so he could join us. Then at the end of July, we've got the doubles tournament, which is what lured us in originally, where the Harridan will be making their debut. And then we've got Ardacon, which is a 4-day extravaganza, which I think we are entered into no less than 3 tournaments for that.
Wow. Okay.
So we've got a 2-day doubles tournament.
Yeah.
And then we've got a 2-day. Then there's a Friday night sort of fun tournament where you're meant to bring like a slightly silly army or slightly themed army. It's all sort of maelstrom games where people are coming on the board edges. And then we've got a 2-day singles tournament, which I think we can enter as a team, so we get cumulative points as well.
Great.
And yeah, that's it for now. The 3 tournaments. I'm looking at some later in the year, but yeah, I think that's more than enough between now and August.
Yeah, I think then we'll get some practice games in, won't we? Together. We had one on Friday that's just gone, and I fitted a couple of games in, and that was nice to get. I hadn't played for quite a while. You've been playing a few games, but that was my first recent game of Lord of the Rings. I don't think I've played in at least maybe a year or more. I don't know. Yeah,
so to give a bit of background on that, we've got 2 friends, Tom and Ash. Tom is a pretty experienced 40k player, and Ash is an enthusiastic newbie in everything, really.
And I've got a friend, we've got a friend, Martin, who plays a bit of 40k and also plays Warhammer Fantasy, so I play that with him. But that's really the limit of the gaming range for me.
So yeah, Tom and Ash, I've been teaching them the game, which has been a great refresher for me because we pretty much dropped this for at least 18 months, I would say. And Chris has been prolifically painting and playing the occasional 40k and fantasy game. And I've pretty much just been playing 40k. Apart from we did do a little bit of a spurt of Battle Companies, didn't we?
Yeah, we had a few Battle Companies tournaments, which was really fun, and highly recommend that game format if you've not done it. Anyone listening, I think it's pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I mean, it's good and it's bad in that it has lots of role-playing elements, doesn't it? It's very fun, but it does create a little bit of paperwork.
Yeah, there's a bit of that. I think once you get the hang of it, you can keep track of that reasonably easily. There's a bit of a problem where if one army becomes relative, if you suffer a few bad things early on, that can have a sort of compounding effect as the campaign goes on. So I sort of think you need to end up with a fairly balanced situation in the first, 4 or 5 games, so that the companies develop at reasonably the same pace. Otherwise, or at least do something to adapt to that. It's good. It's good fun.
The practice games have definitely been showing me. I don't feel intimidated by the game, but I am like, oh yeah, we got to play a few of these.
Definitely a bit rusty, and just getting that sort of all the fine points of the rules, remembering all the details, and
especially having challenged ourselves with a new army.
Yes, and there's more to learn.
So the next section I want to move us on to is something I mentioned we might talk about is new model releases. Just because it's topical, we're going to look at them anyway. We're going to discuss them anyway, and it might be of interest to some people. So we're starting chronological order. We have got some stuff to look at today that is brand new that neither of us have actually seen. So we get a live reaction.
Great, excellent. Yeah. Let's see.
Okay, so let's something that was announced. I think this was the Monday. Games Workshop always release a new model on Monday, don't they? So what we're looking at is the Warhammer community article for the new Dale Windlance, and I think we have both seen this independently.
I have seen this. I saw this earlier in the week. So this isn't my first impression, and I know that we have different views. So I will just briefly say what I like about the model, I think, and then perhaps Sonny can say.
Yeah, what do you think, Chris?
Concerns.
So we've got two guys there. One's holding an extra ammo, is an ammo bearer, and then we've got the guy manning the Windlance. A lot sort of like Bard does on his model. Just aiming it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the two models that accompany the Windlance are in suitable poses. You've got a fairly classic, man calling out, perhaps signalling a target, and another guy manning the siege weapon. I generally like siege weapons, and I think this one's a pretty cool model. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've got a ballista. I think it is for Gondor, isn't it? I think they've got a ballista, or a kind of bolt thrower. So I've got one of those, and then. Yeah, I've just been doing some siege weaponry recently, so I like this is kind of on theme and what I'm enjoying at the moment, and it's quite simple in its design, and I like that. It's sort of got an almost Roman theme, but not quite, and don't object to it. I think it's fine.
I mean, as a model, I think it's absolutely fine.
Yeah, and I think that's where we can.
It looks good, and from my understanding, they're sort of using 3D digital sculpting now. So it probably hasn't been a great deal of work to just get those Dale models and reposition them and then attach them to a Windlance. However, my two hang-ups, and this is where we maybe differ, is number one, although I understand this is to do with the War in the North release, which is coming out soon, which is focusing on sort of the Easterlings attacking the Lonely Mountain and Dale, and this is to support that launch. So I get that, I do get that. I just don't like at the moment that we've got existing armies that have existed for 20 years that don't have their full run of models in production right now. Like for instance, if you want to start up a Moria Goblin army and you don't just want to run the Balrog and a load of goblins, you're completely out of luck. You can't get hold of the captains, you can't get hold of the Black Shields. Like the Made to Order is gone. And it's the same with a lot of other forces. So I'm just a bit like, why are you doing this?
Support the whole range. Yeah. But I think they would say about the storage and the production capacity, and I'm sure I've seen them talk about that. So I know that they cycle in and out some models, but there's not a great deal of certainty about when that's going to happen. It's quite hard to plan what you're going to do. I guess from Games Workshop's perspective, they're wanting to bring out new products all the time, and they maybe do slightly create that like fear of missing out. Like I kind of do need to buy this.
They do always sell a lot.
Yeah. So I think for their business model, it makes sense. And then I think in terms of like, I don't know if you have any concerns about like more broadly the thematic nature of these.
I don't. Yeah. I mean, I'm a bit of an ill-educated purist in that I haven't read the Silmarillion. But I do like the way it is in the Tolkien books, and I don't like that this whole concept is focused on a Peter Jacksonism, as it were, in that this isn't what the Black Arrow is in the book, and this entire creation is focusing on that. But to be honest, I'm not a big fan of all the Hobbit miniatures just because I didn't like the film. So it's the by. Other people can enjoy this, but my main reservation, other than the production capacity, I wish it was going in other places and supporting existing bigger armies rather than creating new ones, is when we've played siege weapons, they are very fun, and it is sort of like, oh, haha, I've missed, it's done nothing, and then another time, oh, I've skewered 6 dwarves.
Yeah, that's devastating,
I don't like the way that when we played them before, that they just section off a whole section of the board.
Oh, I love that. I think it's about like
You like
control.
that, do you?
I like the control of the board that you get from the threat of an attack and the threat that presents. There's a psychology to it. I think it does kind of psych you out if you're like, oh, like there's just loads of crossbows there, or there's like all these bolt throwers, or or even just one. And especially if you've got horses in there. I mean, people are going to be very wary about. And then you've got a sense of, okay, well, where's the enemy likely to move? Where do I want them to move? Therefore, where am I going to position that? I think I like the strategic element of that, actually.
Yeah, okay, yeah, there is another side to it, yeah, which is, yeah, I mean, I thought that's why we might work well as co-hosts.
Yeah,
because we agree a lot of the time, but not all the time.
Not all the time, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, my only reservation, and obviously in the hands of the community, that from everything we've heard is very, very positive, and we're hoping to see confirmed ourselves, is what happens if somebody turns up with 3 bolt throwers?
Well, if they do, then you're just going to have to go round the outside of the board or something. I don't know what, or find some cannon fodder. I don't know, but yeah, I'm sure there's a trade-off there. If they've got those bolt throwers, there's stuff they don't have because they've paid the points for those. So I'm sure there's a workaround. So
I don't know. I'm going to create something on the cuff here. What's our score out of 5 for this new model?
I'm going to give it 3.5. I think.
I thought you'd be higher.
No, well, I think I've seen better, but it's fine. I've got no problem with it. I think 3.5's fair praise.
I mean, yeah, I was thinking, I don't know, yours is a lot lower than I thought. Okay, I'll go with my initial thought. My initial thought was 3 out of 5.
Okay, yeah, well, I think we're about there on it then.
Well, we're split editions.
I've given it a bit more.
3.25. Yeah, for me, like I say, I wish it was going towards another army, and maybe wish it wasn't a siege weapon. But I understand this probably wasn't a lot of work.
But on the basis that it is the model it is, fair enough, I think.
Yeah, okay, all right, 3.25, all right,
Yeah,
okay. Now we're moving on to, there's been some reveals today. I didn't realise they were doing Lord of the Rings reveals today, so today, from what I saw, it was going to be Warcry and the Age of Sigmar stuff.
Well, let's see what they've got for Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, they've done something. So we have
a nice, gift to the baying mob calling for Lord of the Rings releases.
Well, yeah, I do love the fact they're supporting the game.
Yeah, it's great.
Considering there was that dead period.
Absolutely.
But yeah, neither of us have seen this, so I'm gonna click on the other tab and we're gonna have a look. So,
great. Okay.
Is that Grimbjorn and the Bjornings? Oh,
okay.
So weren't the Bjornings? They were the race of people that, the bear guy from The Hobbit was from.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I see.
So it's kind of family, I suppose.
Yeah, so we recently announced the new supplement of Middle-earth strategy battle game, Defense of the North, as I mentioned earlier. Grimbjorn is the chieftain of the Bjornings.
Oh, you missed that pun now, if you'll bear with us for a moment.
Ah, I see, yeah, straight over my head. It's too lowbrow. He's pretty useful with his axe, but just like his father, Bjorn, he's a skin changer. Oh, okay, I thought Bjorn was like the last of his kind, but evidently not.
He obviously got on with stuff after all the action of The Hobbit.
Yeah.
I'm going to settle down now and have a family.
So what we're seeing right now is a giant black bear, much the same as Bjorn's bear, but yeah, painted differently, and quite a cool sort of woodsman guy with an axe in his right hand, a bow on his back, and he's pointing. I think that's quite a good model in of itself. Like I don't know whether the scale is bigger because the bear must be massive, so maybe he's bigger than a normal man, like he is in The Hobbit. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, it's possible. In comparison, the bear doesn't really maybe look big enough. But as you say, maybe he's oversized. Oh,
yeah, actually, yeah, because obviously, complete brain failure there from me. Because Defense of the North is set during the Lord of the Rings, isn't it? Mm. So this is sometime after The Hobbit. So okay. I see where they're coming from now.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to scroll down. What have we got here? Accompanying Grimbjorn into battle are the God, this is really going to do my tongue in. Bjornings?
Bjornings. Yeah.
It's clear from these burly figures that the wilds breed tough folk more than capable of defending their homelands from any invaders. And yeah, we've got a female character with a big axe. Almost, if anyone's seen Vikings, I forget his name.
Yeah, it looks
very Viking style with
almost Rollo-esque figure.
Yeah, with 2 axes, and then a huntsman type figure.
Sure.
So these miniatures all come with alternate heads and can be armed with either great bows or hand and half axes.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah,
I like the variability. They don't often do that with the character models. I think that's a nice touch.
I hope these are human size, to be honest, because they could be used for a lot of things. They're very nice models.
Yeah.
I'm not. I like the female figure. I mean, the face.
It looks like they've got the burly rule. I think they probably are big, especially if you look at the size of the woman. I think they are probably bigger than your average Minas Tirith warrior.
The rest of the model is great, but the face on the female character does look. I don't know. It looks a little off to me.
I think that's a bit of a theme, isn't it, with the digital sculpts? I don't think.
What, that more emotive faces don't quite work?
I don't think it quite. I think that's almost too clean. I think the organic cut of a sculpt from green stuff, I guess, from epoxy, somehow is more expressive and feels a bit realer. I don't know.
Just scanning over there. Obviously, they brought out the command figures for Dale.
Reasonable.
Which it does seem like maybe these are going to be some historical allies for Dale.
Yeah.
To help flush out the army. It seems like they could be pretty much an entirely, well, not entirely new, but a more flushed out Dale force that is set during the Lord of the Rings with support from other allies. I really hope they bring out dwarves, more dwarves.
Always like more dwarves.
Yeah,
I actually really liked the king they brought out recently. I think I might pick that up still. I haven't got it yet.
Which king?
I think they brought a king.
Oh, what? The son of Dane.
Yeah.
They were all cool models. Nice. Yeah, I love dwarves. I hope they get some troops.
Yeah, I really love the model for Durin, actually. I think it's great.
Because obviously I love the Kingdom of Khazad-dûm, and I also quite like all the variants for the Misty Mountain.
Yeah.
But I just maybe Moria. It is reasonably flushed out, but there's sort of only one way to play all of these armies. 2 at the most. And I'd just like to see them
dwarves are always... I mean, dwarves in any fantasy game are limited without the cavalry. I mean, I know they've got these goat riders and hills, but we won't talk about that.
Yeah, they are very dangerous over short distances.
Yes, very dangerous. Like can be said.
But no, I don't know. Because they can ride ponies. They ride ponies in The Hobbit.
Sure, but I don't think any self-respecting dwarf would ride a pony into war. I think he's just got too much dignity for that.
Perhaps. But I see what you're saying. I
get the chariot thing. I mean, I kind of like that in The Hobbit. I think a dwarf, is ingenious enough to get a chariot.
Well, I think we won't go too far into this, but I do think perhaps like Moria, their list could perhaps be solved by maybe giving some extra movement to the Dwarf Rangers. Maybe having a Dwarf Ranger captain who has like the march ability or something like that.
Yeah.
A drum, something to give them a bit more movement. I get what you're saying, that it would be too much to give them 10-inch cavalry that don't cost a remortgage of your house to buy the goats.
Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah. Okay then, so that's pretty much a roundup of all the new models. That's everything we wanted to cover today. As soon as we finish this recording, I think we're going to open up a few more drinks, play some more practice games. We will probably catch up with you all in about... I'm going on a short holiday, so in about 2 weeks' time, hopefully, we'll be able to re-record. I'll probably release this just before I go away after I've edited it, so it won't be too much of a wait, but... Yeah, I don't know about you, Chris, but I've quite enjoyed that. We've just sort of talked about stuff we would chat about anyway.
Grant. Hope people enjoy it. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, cheers. Goodbye, everyone.
Hi, everyone. So I'm just sneaking back in. As perhaps this was the first podcast, there were a few things I forgot to do. So we forgot to give a rating to the Bjornings. So Chris isn't here, but I'm going to give them a 3.5 stars out of 5. I think they're really cool models. I particularly like some of the poses on the Bjorning warriors. Maybe not so much the faces, But what still holds them back for me is we do already have a guy that turns into a bear. And also, I think that I and the community would probably benefit more, and so would Games Workshop sales benefit more from them fleshing out the existing factions that they've got. Uh, if we had full support for the range and like there was unlimited manufacturing times, it would be great to have all these little minor sub factions and things. But the fact is, we don't. And I think the quality of the game and the attractiveness to new players would definitely improve if more of that manufacturing time was just focused on fleshing out the armies we have. Once the game is at a stable enough demand that they can then demand more manufacturing time from the Games Workshop factories, then I think they should be expanding into things like this. The other thing I forgot to cover is we do have an email address. It is middleearthinmercia@gmail.com. So if you want to contact the podcast, if you've got any comments, if you've got any suggestions, if you've got any questions, middleearthinmercia@gmail.com. And Mercia, if in doubt, is just spelled how the title of the podcast is. middleearthinmercia@gmail.com. If anyone has listened all the way through, would love to hear from you. That'd be great. And we'll address that in the next podcast. And finally, if you have made it all the way here to the end, thank you so much for listening. I hope it's brought you a small amount of enjoyment. I would guess this is going to be about an hour runtime. So if you have made it all the way through, I guess you probably did enjoy it to some degree. So thank you so much for listening to our first podcast. I would encourage you to please do stick with us. I have learned so much from just taking this from being like an ambition of something I wanted to do at some point, see what it was like, to actually doing it. I've learned an immense amount in sort of the 2 weeks of drawing everything up, drawing my plans up, and sitting down with Chris and actually recording it. I've learned so much about using the editing software I'm using. And I've made some silly mistakes on this first one, which I'll hopefully replicate for the others. Number one being, don't use two different microphones if you don't need to, because it's made it quite hard to equalize everything. Sort of making sure that there's like not things in the room that are going to create lots of little bits of static and so on. Yeah, definitely learned a lot, and yeah, working with someone else on something like this, like Chris was much better at doing transitions and stuff, and I didn't quite pick up on what he was doing until afterwards. So hopefully, episode number 2 is as much of the same sort of chat in it. I'm quite happy with how all that's gone, but hopefully the production it continues to improve, and we're fine tune all this. I've also had an opportunity to talk to my other mates to play with, Tom and Ash, and they're interested in featuring. So yeah, it could be up to maybe 2.5 weeks until we get another one out. Just because I've got to go on a short holiday for a close friend's wedding, so I'm going to be away from that. And then when I get back, I'm going to probably be quite busy with work to catch up. But then hopefully in the following weeks, I'll get back into the rhythm of playing with the guys, and we'll find an opportunity to sit down and chat. So yeah, thanks again for listening. I hope to see you again soon. Cheers, everyone. Bye. So one final extra I am going to add in is, yes, after editing, I did indeed realise for a good 20 minutes I continued to say flushed out rather than fleshed out. Yeah, okay.